and you can go and use the bathrooms there because you've got property where you're coming from. By property, I mean a home, whether it's you own it or whether you've got a tenancy in it. And so therefore, from that standpoint, you can use whatever is downtown because it's there functioning, organized by the city, the authorities, to provide a sort of a social context of how we live. But if you're homeless and you don't have any property, that's when you become a threat because you have nowhere to go. So in other words, you defecate behind a building, and then the community demonizes you, homeless people, in terms of the fact that, oh look, they're defecating here. Well, where are they supposed to defecate? We all know, because we've got property, what we to do. We can defecate at or in our homes or wherever it is when the bathrooms are open. Everything's worked out, in my view, according to the notion of every sort of anchored space of property. Whereas if you're homeless now, you don't have that, and so therefore you're sort of a persona non grata from that standpoint. And then with what I saw with the national figures, with California, and this is the low count from the point in time count. Our count was 1,500 people in Butte County, but it's 136,000. Well, 136,000 in California, and the next highest one was New York, 77,000. And then after 3 or 4 other states, you're down to 4,000 or 5,000. In other words, the predominance of homeless people is actually in California, according to the count. And then this is where Ed helped me with some of the figures. When you look and you see the people who are unsheltered, it's nearly 60% of people who are on that count, homeless, who are unsheltered.
Yeah, sleeping rough.
Sleeping rough. Now, what by unsheltered? What that means to me is without the possession of property in some form. So they're people who don't belong. So I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, if they don't belong, then what is wrong with our system? And my primarily focus is upon a Christian perspective, because the church, obviously, the Christian church, or whatever form, has bought into the notion of property because they're dependent upon it for their livelihood and all the rest of it. Because, but originally, the early Christians were actually, in many respects, in the first 3 centuries at different times in the Mediterranean world, were actually in a similar situation in respect to that they did not possess their property. They were frequently regarded as aliens, not wanted, had to meet in subversive ways and so forth. And so therefore, one of my goals in writing this is to actually connect that experience of Christianity in the first 3 centuries with an ability to be able for Christians, because I'm writing a Christian, a paper to Christian academics, is to connect then the elements of what it means for us to be Christians, living in this community that we live in now, but to behave in a way that's not commensurate with the way that the rest of the community behaves in respect to the sanctioning or the sacredness, so to speak, of public property. And the model that I will be using for that is Jesus, because Jesus himself lived outside the bounds of what you call normalized sanction existence, which basically again comes down to property. It's quite ironic in a way that Jesus is a model for all these, whatever it is, X number of millions and millions of Christians, especially in the Western world, and yet in so many respects his lifestyle was much of an anathema, or excuse me, that's the wrong word, was at variance, to say the least. He was born in a stable, according to 2 of the Gospels, in very poor circumstances, and he was rejected by his own family, and basically he said, the community of people who gather around me, my disciples, these are my family, my brother and sister and mother and so on. There's a situation where Jesus once said, somebody said to him, I'll follow you wherever you go, and he said, well, foxes have got holes and birds have got nests, but I don't have anywhere to lay my head.
Yeah.
So, all right. And then right at the very end, when he was put to death by a combination of two what you might call legal authorities. That's Roman jurisdiction, and under that, the authority of the priesthood in Jerusalem. And one of the books of the New Testament, the book of Hebrews, actually makes a reference to him being put to death outside the camp. What that means is outside the confines of the sacred city of Jerusalem. The point I'm making is that in the end, Jesus became the personified person who has no home, who is rejected by everyone, even to a point where the community said, we will put him to death. I mean, you can't reject a person any more than saying, we will execute you, which is what they did with him. And the strange thing is that person has become a model for how Christians are to live. That's what I'm talking about. So I want to explore more that route, which doesn't mean that that Christians don't have. We're not communistic in the sense that we don't have private property. I don't think that means that at all. But it does mean an exploration of the model of how the church sanctions the status quo and is such a part of the status quo that it seems to be unbothered by the fact that there are all these homeless people who are dispossessed and disenfranchised, and there's no refuge for them. We need more than two churches to provide shelter in the evening. Let's put it that way.
It's really fascinating. So God puts you in different places. I've been doing a lot of research on the Gospels. Tolstoy actually had a book he wrote called The Gospels in Brief, and he puts all four of them together. And actually, when you were talking, it made me remember. And I went back and looked at the Bible. I thought Tolstoy did an exceptional job of representing what was put in the Bible. But he was really upfront in the way he wrote it, that Jesus was put to death by the Jerusalem priesthood because they were fearful that his nonviolent life and the way he gathered people to follow him was going to upset the apple cart. And that's why they killed him, because he was going to upset the apple cart. I mean,
most scholars will say that, or I think most scholars will say that what precipitated that was Jesus cleansing the temple, which was a symbolic act of saying this whole system is corrupt. Right in the center, he did that right in the center, which was the sacred area, which is the temple. Well, we don't have a sacred area, in my view, in our society, in the sense of a church or a temple. Our sacred area is communicated to us, in my view, through secularism. And secularism is that the sacred canopy, so to speak, is our community. And so the downtown plaza and so forth, all these are the sacred areas. And who is it who are messing with the sacred areas? There's one element that I will be exploring for Christians. I want to say that there's a sense in which we Christians need the homeless people to remind us of the experience of Jesus, from which we tap into and find our whole reason to be. So that from that standpoint, rather than being drawn away from it, we find Jesus there. And Jesus himself, in some ways, said as much once. For example, there's a sort of an enigmatic parable where he draws this picture of Judgment Day, and he refers to the Son of Man, which I think he refers to himself, and he says there'll be two groups of people. One, he calls them the sheep and the goats, and he's going to say to the sheep, "Come into the kingdom that's been prepared for you, and because I know you and you know me, because when I was homeless, you helped me. When I was needing a drink, you gave me drink, food. When I was in prison, you visited me." And so on. And they say, well, when did we never saw you. We don't know what you're talking about. This is in the story, the parable. And then Jesus says, when you did it to the least of these among you, you did it to me. So somehow Jesus is found then in the most broken of people. So from that standpoint, I think we need, and I'm not saying we need them, so therefore let's perpetuate brokenness, and let's perpetuate homelessness. No, we seek to eradicate it, but let's not walk away from it. Let's not shield our eyes from it. Let's not have these people in our churches because they'll disrupt us. Exactly. We need disruption, but in my view, so does what I'd call the secular community, because in my view, the city is based upon a secular notion that it exists without God. And I'm thinking of the post-Enlightenment situation in respect to the construction of communities outside of the pale of the churches in the Middle Ages in Europe. So in other words, every civic organization was functioned around church polity, church order. After the Enlightenment, in very simple terms, it came down to the fact that a secular community exists without recourse to God. So where are the churches? Well, they're sort of shunted like into the suburbs somewhere, but they're not really needed. They're not really needed for society to function. So, in other words, and then what is it that the homeless do that threatens the secular community? In my view as a Christian, because I believe in God through Jesus Christ, one of the threats of the homeless community to the security that's found in the secular community, the city, with its credit cards and its banks and its jobs and it's street after street. You go to Los Angeles or wherever, you just keep traveling around the street. This community is there, and that is security, that is safety. And so when somebody comes along who's homeless, who doesn't fit into that system, they remind us of the fact that our whole existence is insecure. And that this fabric of certainty that we've got around us in the city is a fabric. We all know we're going to lose it in the end anyway, because we're going to die without recourse of funds and family and friends and city, and who cares what movies we've been to and how much money we've got in the bank. But we want to put that off as long as possible. So don't forget, what I'm doing is I'm writing to a Christian audience.
Yeah.
Is I'm saying then that I think you might say that unbelievers, in a sense, are also afraid of recognizing the insecurity of life which a homeless person testifies to. And on a popular level, popular anecdotal level, at the Jesus Center sometimes when people are serving there in groups, not necessarily Christian groups at all, they're serving food and they'll come up to me and they'll say, boy, I'm 3 paychecks away from eating at the Jesus Center, or there for the grace of God go I, or I have a brother or a cousin who's homeless. In other words, that threat is always there, and especially there when you, in my view, when you see somebody who is like coming to see you. So I saw 3 or 4 people I know who were ferreting among garbage downtown looking for stuff, and to a sort of well-versed, so to speak, secular person, that person becomes a threat, because he or she interferes with the view of reality that I've constructed, which is that I have security, I'm safe, here I am. Here's this person who's not got it. All right, in my view, that's sort of a hint of the insecurity of our whole existence. Now, that's not an argument that would convince or appeal to somebody who didn't accept Christian presuppositions, but I'm hoping that I develop to an argument that Christian people will hear and listen to in respect to the construction of our communities. Anyway, that's...
Gandhi had a quote. He says, I so much like your Christ, but I so much don't like your Christians because they're so unlike your Christ. It's a little harsh.
It's very,
but there's a lot of
harsh.
truth. A lot of times there's truth in some of the harsher statements.
Yeah.
I actually was telling Double D, because I've been blessed to do this, because I've actually walked the walk, and I don't have any, I'm Mr. Pro Bono, so I have no levers or pushes or any puppet strings, and I really, really like that. So it gives me a way to kind of get involved that other people might not, that are secure. Because I'm fortunate, I live in Section 8 housing through HUD-VASH, through the VA, because I was a vet, I don't pay anything. So I just spent the last $7 I had helping some homeless people. Why? Well, I've really been relieved of that burden of having to worry about physically paying bills. But I told Double D, I said, I'd much rather spend my time with a poor person because they're much more honest, they're much more upfront, they're much more genuine. They're just genuine people. When you talk to people that are poor, they just tell it like it is. And I think actually the Christian community is missing something, not connect. They're missing God. They're missing the word of Jesus, not connecting with poor people. And they're missing, and I think they tie into your fear thing. I think they've got this perception that I think the secular society has kind of pushed on them about, what to fear and how to view these people. And a lot of times people get stuck in that rut. They don't want to change those blinders. Boy, if you start sitting in that plaza, your blinders will get changed. And they're horribly miscast. Homeless people are just tremendous. It's the most grievous thing I've witnessed as a person. When I started this walk 2 years ago, Bill, I came from the third richest county, and I live in the third poorest in California, Placer County. I had some perceptions. Many of them have held true, but many of them haven't. And the one that I really didn't have a perception or not is two things that really have shocked me. Is how serious the problem is, and how much of lack of effort and resources that there are there, and how much these people are miscast.
One of the key words in the New Testament is the idea of hospitality, the very word itself, which has sort of changed in its meaning. Today it means something like providing entertainment for people. So the hospitality industry is you provide baristas and so forth in respect to situations where people go out and they have coffee and they have a nice environment and so on. But for Christians, the word in its root meaning in the New Testament is basically a compound word of a Greek word, which I'll say, which you can actually work out its meaning, philoxenia, comprised of philos, love of, Philadelphia, brotherly love, and xenia, xenos, xenophobic, foreigners, strangers. It actually means, it's a compound, it means love of strangers. So Christians in the early church were encouraged to practice hospitality, which then literally is what I'm saying is the love of strangers. And they became that way because they were strangers themselves, aliens, who had been accepted by God, and at the same time then knew how to accept others who were strangers themselves. And of course for the first 3 centuries, until Christianity became what you might call the legal religion under Constantine, Christians were the sort of unregistered aliens, if I can say that, because I'm a registered alien in the United States.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I'm not a citizen here. And so therefore I call Christians, and especially myself, to the notion of the love of strangers, that we deal with the people whom Jesus Christ was drawn towards, which is anyone who is broken, anyone who is in need of a home, of a house, of sustenance, of a need for rehabilitation. Today I was with a man and I bought him lunch at McDonald's on a simple gesture where I've only known this man 4 times, and I've known him on the basis of the fact that each time I've seen him, he was drunk. And so I just noticed when he was talking to me that he was sounded a bit different. And I made a reference gently saying, it's unusual the way you're talking to me. And he says, well, I'm 4 days clean. And in comparison to 9 years ago, where I would have just dismissed that in my heart, thought, well, that's nothing. I looked at him and I said, well, let's celebrate that. Because 4 days can become 4 weeks, can become 4 months, can become 4 years, etc., etc. Because I've seen it and experienced it many, many times with people who come up to me with a little coin and celebrating and saying, this is my AA coin, etc. And so I bought him lunch at McDonald's. He's a homeless man, and he's got 4 days, and I pray for him, because I think that that's what we're called to do, is 4 days, okay, it may be that tomorrow he's out on the street again, living to use his words, the fool's life of being full of alcohol, and it's already destroyed his life. The fact that he's living somewhere near Lowe's in an incognito relation, in an incognito situation. In other words, he doesn't want anybody to know where he is. But 4 days, well, that to me is I'm a Christian. I'm drawn to that. I'm not naive. I work at the Jesus Center. In other words, what could happen? But I know that person can take it from there and become what I think that he wants to be deep down in himself, certainly what God wants him to be, and what I want him to see him be. So all I'm saying is, I think we Christians should be drawn to help people in whatever broken situation it is. It may be, it doesn't necessarily have to be with homeless people. People all around us are all in need in respect to that.
Absolutely.
So, you know.
And the only thing I could add to that is it is so devastatingly difficult. It's a multiplier. I don't know on what the Richter scale if you're homeless and trying to stay clean and sober.
Yeah.
It's damn near impossible. Which is one thing that I think is great that the church is considering opening up their doors, because it's going to be a hell of a lot easier for that guy to stay 4 days clean and sober if he was going over to Trinity Methodist tonight and get some love and fellowship and a hot meal.
You're right.
Than figuring out which bridge he's going to sit at and how he's not going to take that bottle when it's passed to him. It's very difficult.
That's right.
And I think we're just kind of like cast these people out.
Let's now just talk just the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, you got 10 minutes.
In a different way. Is that the danger of what we're talking about is that we idolize, so to speak, the homeless people, and we make them our center of existence. Oh, we must help them and so on. Now, having said that, the difficulty that I found is that there are very few worthy poor. Now, by worthy poor, traditionally in the New Testament, the worthy poor would be widows who have no orphans, kids,
illness,
strangers, the worthy poor. Most of the people that I come across, in many respects, have, through their own activity, created the situation that they're in, and they want to push that upon me as if it's my responsibility to help them. All right, it's my responsibility in the sense of I am my brother's keeper, but the difficulty becomes, and this is where I haven't got answers on this at this point, is that it's a two-way street. How do you help those people? And that's where it's very difficult, because there's a sense in which they are worthy in the sense that they are human beings and need help to get to the next stage. But there are reasons of why they are like they are. Some people have got a self-destruct button within them, in a sense, and it just goes. And I have no recourse to that other than on a daily basis to seek to help. But at the same time, if he's a good example, because he at the moment is banned from the Jesus Center for a week, because in the dining room where we have women and children who are trying to cope, people who have lost their jobs and they're there, and he's effing and cursing because of something that's happened in his life. He's not respecting who we are.
He's probably doing meth too.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. When I'm doing street pastors, one time on a Saturday night, who did I come across with? A group of guys who were all using some form of dope. This is at 1 a.m. So it's not I don't want to do a sort of Marxist version of the poor where they sort of glorify them, because that's not the case. So what I want to do is on an individual, I help them on an individual basis, and then I see what happens. I got one guy who 10 years ago, on my first week at the Jesus Center, the reason I remember him 10 years ago was because I broke up my first fight between him and another guy. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't see him for 5 years. He was in prison, and he came out, saw him a little bit, and he was in prison again. And he's now come out. He's been out a while, and I've approached him twice, and I've said to him, when you and I got a relationship, you go back the first week when I was in the Jesus Center and thought, what the hell am I doing here? I broke up a fight between you and another guy. I said, we've got a bond. I said, you know something? I said, I want to really help you because you're part of my beginnings. So please come and see me and tell me what I need to do. Mm-hmm. Do you know he's not been to see me? Now, it's either because he's in a state of mind of being in prison, doing his drug activity, whatever it is he's doing, and he doesn't allow the fact that somebody's actually I don't know what I can do. Maybe I can not do nothing for him, but somebody actually is there saying, I want to help you, and he doesn't want to pick it up. And so in the end, I can walk away from him and think, I can't help you. Ultimately, we're all responsible for ourselves. And I'm not saying now that don't forget, I'm not saying that we shouldn't help other people. We do. But at the same time, I'm not going to. Well, let me put it in a different way now. And this is one of the difficulties. The difficulty is how we as human beings help to be what their deep selves, or no, maybe not even that, what we think, or what I think God wants them to be. And I'm going to use one of your terms here. You have to be down and dirty, and I mean that. I mean okay, Michael, what are you going to do today? What's going to, and this guy's 4 days clean. What's going to happen tomorrow? That's all we're concerned about. Is on that simple level, rather than thinking of the larger problem and whatever's going on and so on. In terms of the structures that have created this situation, which through self-destruction, as well as structures around them where they can't get out of the situation they're in, is such that here they are, and they're caught up in this. So I want to be a realist from that standpoint, but I don't want to be a cynic.